what does your ideal workday actually look like? Like, I want you to stop and picture it in your mind. You know what a miserable day of work looks like because you have it. I'm guessing you have it pretty often. If you're watching this channel, it's because you're trying to transition over to being, to being a digital nomad, which means there's a good chance that your work life is probably miserable because most people's work life is miserable. Even if you have a good job that pays well, there's just something about it you don't like. Sitting in the office, having to wear certain clothes, having to deal with certain people, having a scheduled place you have to live. The place you live is determined by the job you have. It's such a pivotal thing of just that one little minor thing of you've got to be in an office at a certain time every single day. And that office is on one place on earth, and that dictates everything. That dictates nearly everything else about your life, which is just like the location of the place that you use to get money to buy food. And so, if you're in my other video, I was talking about how important it is to have some level of structure and some level of routine. Don't let your life just turn into chaos. You need to still find ways to be productive and contributive, regardless of what your actual income needs are. Even if most people, need money, so they need to work. So obviously that's a no-brainer. But some people are kind of past that. And my point about, so there's value in staying productive no matter what. But I want you to go back to that situation where you're sitting in your office and the little details, like think about the pain, whether you're for some reason listening to this while you're at work, which is probably not a good sign, or you're listening to this at another time. But think back on a recent memory where you were sitting in an office or you were sitting in a meeting, but you were just doing something that you were miserable. And I want you to think about all the little things around you. I want you to think about the way the seat feels, the way your clothes feel, the way the temperature in the room, whether you're hungry, whether you're tired, whether you're, really annoyed with a customer or with your boss or some other thing, or that there's some other thing that you want to be able to do with your schedule. And think about those little things that bother you, and take that and just think realistically, what would I change? What is the one thing I would do? Would I sleep a little more? Would I have gone to the gym at a certain time? Would I have eaten a certain thing? Would I not be dealing with a certain person? And rethink your work environment, the things you would want to change. And get very granular about if this was this way, this thing bothers me, so I want to change this slightly. And maybe it's something about your commute, maybe it's something about the temperature outside, but you can basically start customizing those things. You're still going to end up having some sort of obligation to do something that contributes economically to the rest of the world. But as you're going through that process of thinking about it, just start being specific. And if anything, it probably helps to just write it down. Write it down, take a piece of paper, and just on one side put, these are all the things that are bothering me about work and all the downstream effects of work. Maybe it's a matter of the travel one is obvious, but you don't have enough time at the end of the day to do certain things you want to do, or spend time with certain people, or whatever it is. And take those on the left side, and then on the right side, put, if in a perfect world, this is how I would change it, and then put in there some little notes about how what do you think you could realistically do? And there's probably some levels of customization that you can make in your own life. I know that for me, I used to. I'm bringing this up because it was something I used to do. I used to sit in my office. I had the particular vocation that I had. Our offices were typically out in the middle of nowhere, and so I generally worked in a more of a remote area. And not remote in the good sense, more like remote from far away from civilization. And so I am a pretty social guy, and so I typically wanted to live in the city, which meant I had a pretty bad morning commute. When I was living in Korea, I had a commute of about 2 hours both ways, which sounds insane, but that's how unhappy I was with all the downstream effects of working in my office. And I actually did like a lot of aspects of my job, but the location was, that commute really was brutal. Doing that every day, I did that commute for 4 years. And, every morning I just kind of felt like a sucker. I was just like, why am I wasting so much of my life just so that I can both pay rent and have a social life? Like, there's the old trilemma of, you can have two of these, but you can't have all three. You could have a social life, you have an income, or you can have sleep. And I had to sacrifice one of those things, and I chose sleep, which is the most unhealthy thing you can do. But that was the choice I made. But then even then, when I was sitting in the office, I would still think about other things that were really bothering me. Maybe it was just kind of my time constraint, the fact that I had to go, my lunch break was at more or less a set time. I mean, there's a little bit of flexibility, but it wasn't like I could just be doing something, be semi-productive for however long, and then just be like, you know what, I'm feeling hungry, or I need some downtime, I need a break. It was, it's mandated when you get to take your breaks. And so, and I would be like, well, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do this, or I could do it this way. And I actually, to as max an extent possible, I actually did optimize my schedule as well as I could. I would go to lunch religiously during lunch, I'd go to the gym religiously, pretty much no matter what, unless it was like someone in my immediate office of 8 people was having a going away or something, or it was something that was extremely unskippable. Yeah, I never ate during lunch. I was always in the gym. And then when I would get back, I had done all my meal prep and everything. I had my little containers. I would throw them in the microwave, and then just eat while I was going through my emails. And so I'd basically be shoveling food in while I'm sitting in front of my computer and just sort of clicking through stuff and, semi-working. And if I got thrown back in that environment tomorrow where I had to work in an office, I would go back into that routine. But at the same time, I would just sit there thinking I wish I didn't have to make this compromise. I wish I could, pick when I go to lunch. I wish I could pick when I go to the gym. I wish I could, not always be basically stuck with having, microwave meals, microwaved mush. I mean, but it was just when you have a heavy restriction, like having a set office you have to be at, it takes up so much of your bandwidth. Everything else becomes a different choice you have to make, a compromise you have to make between one thing or another thing. So and that's the main thing. It was kind of having a sandbox. You can either have a sandbox that's the size of a regular floor tile, or you could have a sandbox the size of a house. Either way, you're still constrained. You've got more room to sort of play around. Obviously, at the end of the day, we're still all constrained by 24 hours. We're still constrained by the need to eat and sleep and other things. But outside of that, you have a large degree of latitude on what you actually do based on how you set up your life. But the thing is when you're sort of redesigning everything, that's one of your major considerations. Just needs to be rather than just thinking oh, this fucking sucks. Rather than just thinking about how much the moment sucks, think about what would you prefer your life to actually look like, and then how would you transition? And so I would definitely recommend you do that. You just think real hard on it. You get a piece of paper and you just think I want to go, I'm here, this is where I want to go, this is what I'd want to change, and then sort of do it within reason. As you accrue more information, you'll be able to refine it and have a more realistic vision. It's very easy to just think, once you leave the office, like how whatever the alternative is, automatically going to be super easy, and you're going to be amazing and successful and all this other stuff. Is this even the right way? That doesn't look like the right way. All right, so kind of a little bit of a weird gap in the sidewalk, trying to go to the co-working space, and I guess I entered more of a little rice paddy, kind of, well, it's not even a rice paddy, but it's basically a big open field next to a temple, and it doesn't have like a set walking path, and so yeah, I'll just get over there. But anyway, just to wrap things up, as far as like the exercise of like concentrating on something and figuring out like what do you want your life to actually look like, and try to figure, try to decide on that, I'd highly recommend you do this. I'd say that, and then as you like look at each individual point, like look at how realistic that is, and how how you're going to actually accomplish that. 안녕하세요. 오늘. And besides that, I think that's about all I got. Subscribe for more.